The dining table was set with care. Candles flickered softly, and a warm meal sat untouched, the steam slowly disappearing. Danielle sat quietly, checking the time again. It was their anniversary. She wore a navy blue dress that Jason had once called stunning, and she'd spent the whole afternoon cooking his favorite, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. When the front door finally opened, her heart skipped. She stood up with a smile, expecting a hug, a kiss, something. But Jason walked in slowly, his face cold, distant. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at the food or at her dress. He didn't sit down. "I can't do this anymore," he said suddenly. "You're just too boring." The words hit like a slap. Danielle froze. "What?" she said, barely above a whisper, her voice shaking. But Jason had already picked up his keys again. No explanation, no emotion, just silence. The door closed behind him. Danielle stood in the same spot, stunned. Slowly she sat down, her hands resting on her lap. The candles flickered. The food grew cold. Her eyes stared at the empty chair across the table. No yelling, no fight, just quiet heartbreak. The room felt colder now, emptier. A single tear rolled down her cheek, then another. She didn't speak. She didn't move. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock, marking the moment everything changed. Danielle woke up early, even though there was no one to wake up for anymore. The house was quiet, but she moved through it gently, like someone who still respected the silence. Her morning started the same, tea in her favorite mug. A short moment by the window, watching the sky slowly change. There was peace in her routine, even if it was touched with sadness. She watered her plants one by one, talking softly to them like old friends. They were thriving. She took care of them the way she used to take care of her marriage, with patience, attention, and love. Her phone lit up with messages, work reminders, missed calls from her sister, a church group invite she didn't respond to. She read them all, smiled faintly, and put the phone back down. The world kept going, but she was still in a slower place, still catching up with herself. As she folded laundry, a soft scarf slipped from the pile. It was one she used to wear when she and Jason would take walks in the fall. She paused, holding it for a moment, before folding it carefully and placing it at the bottom of the drawer. No rush to forget, no need to hold on either. In a quiet flashback, we see her trying in that marriage, lighting candles for dinner, booking a weekend trip he cancelled last minute, laughing at jokes he no longer listened to. She tried, again and again, but her effort was invisible to someone who had already stopped seeing her. Now, in the present, she didn't fill the silence with noise. She didn't try to force her way out of the loneliness. Instead, she let it sit beside her, like an old friend who had come to visit. She wasn't broken, just quiet. In the mirror, she looked at herself, not to fix her makeup or check her hair, but to really see herself. Her eyes weren't sad. They were tired, maybe, but they were kind, steady. She took a deep breath and gave herself a small, honest smile. There was strength in the way she moved through her day. Not loud, not showy, but strong. She didn't post quotes about healing. She didn't cry for attention. She simply lived, one soft, steady step at a time. Danielle wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry. She was learning how to carry her own heart again, slowly and with care. And that was more powerful than anything anyone had ever called her. It started with a walk. Danielle hadn't planned to go far, just around the block to clear her head. The air was crisp, and the sun was gentle on her skin. She wore a sweater she hadn't touched in months, one that still held a memory of better days. As she passed a small community center, she noticed a flyer taped to the glass door. It was hand-drawn, with colorful markers and slightly uneven letters. Art for healing. Beginner's welcome. No experience needed. She paused. Years ago, she used to sketch in old notebooks, mostly in secret, little things, faces, flowers, moments she wished would last longer. Jason had once called it a cute little hobby, before asking her to put it aside so they could focus on more important things. Eventually, she did. The sketchbooks ended up in a box under the bed. Danielle stood there for a moment, reading the flyer again. Her feet moved before her mind did. She walked into the center, asked about the class, and signed up without overthinking. That Saturday, she sat at a table with strangers, women and men of all ages, all holding pencils or brushes, like they were reaching for something just out of memory. The instructor was warm and funny, reminding them that this wasn't about perfection. This is about permission, she said. Permission to try, permission to feel. Danielle didn't draw anything spectacular that day, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Alive, present, engaged. Later that night, she pulled out one of her old journals. The pages were yellowed, but the ink was still strong. She wrote about the class, about how nervous she'd been, and how glad she was that she went. She wrote without worrying about how it sounded, just like she used to. The next few days were filled with small but meaningful shifts. She bought a set of colored pencils. She started taking photos of things that caught her eye. An older couple holding hands at the bus stop, sunlight through a cracked window, her reflection in puddles after rain. There was no big announcement, no social media post saying, "I'm starting over." But something had begun, quietly, naturally. She even started dressing differently, nothing drastic, just choosing colors she used to love. Yellows, greens, a floral scarf she hadn't worn since college. She started smiling more at people in the grocery store, striking up short conversations with neighbors. Her world, once dim and small, started stretching gently at the edges. And she didn't do it to make Jason regret anything. She wasn't trying to prove her worth to him. This was for her, for the parts of her that had been buried under years of being quiet and practical and safe. One night, as she taped one of her small sketches to the fridge, she looked at it and felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a step, a spark, a beginning. And for the first time in a long while, Danielle whispered to herself, "I think I'm coming back." Danielle continued going to the art class every Saturday. At first, she kept to herself, quietly sketching, listening, observing. But over time, she started opening up. There was Tanya, a retired nurse who painted cityscapes in bold colors, and Reese, a college student trying to reconnect with their creativity after burnout. Danielle found comfort in their laughter, their stories, their honesty. They didn't ask her about her past. They didn't need to. They saw her just as she was now, and they welcomed her. She began looking forward to the classes. It wasn't just about drawing anymore. It was about feeling connected, about sharing something personal and real. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. Outside the class, Danielle started saying yes more. She joined a local book club. She helped organize a community cleanup. She even volunteered to speak at a women's event about rediscovering creativity as a form of healing. She wrote her speech with trembling hands but delivered it with a calm, steady voice. People clapped, not just politely but genuinely. A few came up afterward to thank her, saying her words had touched them. But the growth wasn't always easy. There were still days when the silence of the house felt like too much. Nights when she questioned herself, wondered if any of it really mattered. She would catch a glimpse of a couple laughing in a restaurant and feel a sudden wave of grief wash over her. Or she'd overhear someone mention Jason's name. He had started seeing someone new, apparently, and for a moment, it stung, sharper than she expected. One afternoon, she opened her closet and found the old dress she wore on that anniversary night. She held it for a while, then carefully folded it and placed it in a donation bag. It wasn't anger, it was release. That version of herself, the one who waited, hoped, shrank, wasn't who she was becoming. Her wardrobe began to change without her even noticing. Brighter colors, flowing fabrics, statement earring, not to attract anyone, just because it made her feel more her. Her apartment, once dim and quiet, slowly filled with color. Plants climbing the windowsill, canvases leaning against the walls, music playing softly in the background. She took a leap and signed up for a weekend art retreat in another city. It was the first time she had traveled alone in years. The train ride was peaceful, the hotel simple but beautiful. She sketched by a lake, shared her work with strangers who became fast friends, and stayed up late talking under the stars. At the retreat, one of the instructors pulled her aside after a session. "You've got something special," he said gently. "There's honesty in your work. People can feel it." Danielle didn't know what to say. She simply smiled, holding back tears, not of sadness, but of something that felt like pride. Still, there were moments of doubt, times when she looked in the mirror and saw a woman still healing, still unsure. But those moments were fewer now, softer, easier to sit with. Her confidence wasn't loud. It didn't shout, but it showed in the way she carried herself, shoulders no longer hunched, eyes that looked forward instead of down. She started selling prints of her art at local markets. People stopped by her booth, drawn to the colors, the emotion, the gentle strength in each piece. "Did you always do this?" someone asked. Danielle smiled and shook her head. "No," she said. "I just started living differently." Her name began to pop up in small circles, on event flyers, social pages, not as someone's wife, but as Danielle Moore, local artist, speaker, creative soul, and yet none of it was about fame or success. It was about the quiet joy of waking up and liking the woman she was becoming, about knowing she didn't need anyone's permission to shine. In the middle of all this growth, Danielle received a message from Jason, simple, unexpected. "Hey, I saw your name on something. You look happy. Would be good to catch up." She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she put her phone down, stood up, and went to water her plants. She had somewhere to be, an art walk downtown, where her newest piece would be featured. It was called Unfolding, a portrait of a woman surrounded by light, her eyes open, her face calm, her hands reaching forward, not back. Danielle was no longer the woman waiting at a dinner table. She was the woman stepping fully into her life, one sketch, one step, one sunrise at a time. The gallery buzzed with quiet excitement. Guests moved slowly, admiring the art on the walls, some talking softly, others standing still, just taking it in. Warm lights reflected off polished floors, casting a soft glow on everything they touched. In the center of the room stood Danielle, wearing a deep emerald dress that flowed gently as she moved. She looked radiant, calm, collected, entirely herself. It was her first solo show, Pieces of Becoming, a collection of paintings, sketches, and written notes that told her journey through grief, rediscovery, and self-love. Each piece carried a part of her, and people were moved. Strangers complimented her work. Old classmates hugged her. Her friends from art class cheered her on with pride. Danielle didn't notice him at first. Jason stood near the back, near a canvas titled The Quiet Hour. He looked almost out of place in the room, like someone who had walked into a world he never imagined she could create. He had come after seeing a post online. He didn't expect this. His eyes scanned the room slowly, landing on her in the center. She laughed lightly at something someone said. Her hands moved as she talked, expressive and alive. Jason froze. He expected her to look bitter, broken, maybe smaller somehow, but she was glowing. For a moment, their eyes met across the room. Time slowed. No one else seemed to exist. He opened his mouth slightly, like he might say something. She didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She held his gaze, not with anger, not even with sadness, just peace. A small smile curved her lips, and then she turned gently back to her guests. Jason stayed for a while, walking through the gallery, stopping at a few pieces longer than others. One of them, a self-portrait titled Awake, held his attention for several minutes. The woman in the painting looked like Danielle, but stronger, brighter. He didn't recognize her, and that was the point. Danielle stepped outside for air as the sun began to set, the sky painted in soft gold and blush. Tanya joined her, handing her a cup of ginger tea. "You did it," Tanya said. Danielle looked out at the street, people passing, lights blinking on. "Yeah," she replied, her voice steady. "I really did." Jason never approached her that night. Maybe he couldn't find the words. Maybe he realized they weren't his to say anymore. Inside the gallery, her work stood tall, telling the story of a woman who had once been called too boring and who had become someone unforgettable. And Danielle? She didn't need to prove anything anymore. She was finally, fully herself. A few days after the show, Danielle sat at her favorite cafe, sketching on the back of a receipt while waiting for her tea. The hum of soft music and quiet conversations surrounded her, and she felt at ease, like this was exactly where she was meant to be. Her phone buzzed, a message. "You looked amazing the other night. I've been thinking a lot. Can we talk?" Jason. She read it once, then again, but there was no rush of emotion, no confusion, just clarity. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her notebook and began to draw. A woman standing in a field, arms outstretched, light pouring around her, free, whole, herself. That evening, back at home, she walked to the small box tucked away at the bottom of her closet. She opened it slowly. Inside were old keepsakes from her marriage. Photos, cards, the wedding ring. She held the ring in her hand for a long moment. Then, calmly, she walked to the window, opened it, and set the ring on the windowsill. Not tossed, not broken, just left behind. The breeze moved gently through the room. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need him to understand what he had lost. Her life was full now. Her heart was strong, and her joy came from within. As she stepped outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows and warm light across the sidewalk. She slipped on her sunglasses, pulled her jacket around her shoulders, and walked forward with an easy, quiet confidence. Not running from anything, not chasing anything, just walking toward everything that was finally hers. Sometimes, the people who leave us think they're walking away from something small, but what they're really doing is setting us free. Danielle didn't need a dramatic moment to prove her worth. Her strength was in the quiet ways she rebuilt her life. Day by day, step by step, she learned how to listen to her own voice again, how to enjoy her own company, how to love without needing to be chosen. She didn't change to become someone else. She simply uncovered who she had always been. There was no revenge, no need to show him what he missed. The real victory was waking up with peace in her heart and purpose in her hands. Danielle's story is not just hers. It's for anyone who has ever been left behind, told they weren't enough, or asked to shrink themselves. Her journey is a reminder. Growth can begin in silence. Healing doesn't always shout. And sometimes, the greatest transformation comes not from what you gain, but from what you let go. She didn't get back what she lost. She became something stronger, and she never looked back.